Nora was 72 years old and had a young neighbor who once asked her, with the direct honesty of someone who hadn't yet learned that some simple questions are the hardest to answer, "Nora, what is it like to grow old?" Nora was quiet for a moment, not because the question had offended her, because it was genuine. And genuine questions deserve genuine answers, and genuine answers need a moment to be found. She looked at her hands resting on the kitchen table, hands with more visible veins now, a few age spots, fingers that had held children, pots, letters, medicines, flowers, wet handkerchiefs, and cups of tea on long afternoons. Hands that had changed considerably, and yet were still hers. "It's strange," she said finally. "On the outside, you keep changing. On the inside, you stay yourself." The young neighbor thought about that. So did Nora. Because some answers are given to someone else, and only afterwards do we realize we also needed to hear them.
She had grown up in a small town in the north of England, the eldest of 5, in a family where work started early and dreams were considered something for people with time to spare. She had had dreams anyway. She had wanted to study nursing, not for status, but out of a genuine curiosity about how the body worked, what happened when it failed, and what happened when it recovered. She had read everything she could find on the subject in the small local library. She had kept that desire carefully, the way you keep something precious. As a girl, she had paid close attention whenever she accompanied her mother to the GP surgery. She noticed the nurse's movements, the instruments, the way she washed her hands, the manner in which she asked simple questions that seemed to open important doors. Nora couldn't explain it, but she felt there was a beauty in that organized care, in that human attempt to ease someone's pain with knowledge, presence, and attention.
But life had followed a different path. An early marriage, children shortly after, a different town, a daily life that left no room for nursing school or libraries. The desire had stayed stored, but it hadn't disappeared. Real desires don't disappear. They only wait. Sometimes they wait inside a drawer, sometimes inside an unspoken sentence, sometimes inside a woman who spends decades caring for everyone else's life and still carries, in some quiet corner of herself, a small flame she never quite lets go out. At 64, after her youngest had left home and her husband George had retired, and the house had suddenly gone quiet in a way she hadn't anticipated, Nora did something that surprised everyone. She enrolled in a course. Not nursing. She had made her peace with that particular dream in other ways over the years, but a first aid course, then a community health course. Then she became a volunteer at the local GP surgery, 2 mornings a week, doing the kind of work that doesn't appear on a CV, but appears in people's lives in concrete and real ways. At first, she arrived uncertain. She worried it might be too late to learn new terminology, new procedures, new routines. But she quickly found that her age, rather than being a disadvantage, brought a kind of patience the younger volunteers were still developing. She listened without rushing. She wasn't easily unsettled. She knew how to recognize when someone said, "It's nothing," with the face of someone who needed to be heard. There were mornings when people seemed to relax simply because Nora did not hurry them. An elderly man who had come in only to ask about a prescription ended up telling her that he had been sleeping badly since his wife went into care. A young mother, embarrassed by tears she could not stop, found Nora handing her a tissue without alarm, without pity, without making the moment larger than it needed to be. Nora had no official title for that kind of care, but she understood it. She had lived long enough to know that sometimes help begins before advice, in the simple act of staying steady beside someone. George had looked at her when she told him and said in his particular way, "Took a while, but it got there." She had laughed. It was the right response, because there was no pity in it, no condescending surprise, just recognition, as if he was saying, "I always knew this was still in you." The young neighbor who had asked the question was called Amy. She was 29 and was in the middle of one of those phases of life that are simultaneously full of possibility and paralyzing, too many choices,
too many possible directions, the feeling that by now she should know what she wanted, and the guilt of not knowing. She had begun talking to Nora by accident, an open gate, a free afternoon, a question that had led to another and another, until their afternoon conversations had become part of both their rhythms. Amy liked Nora's house because time seemed to move differently there, not slowly, just more humanly. There was tea made without rushing, plants on the windowsill, a radio playing quietly somewhere, and a woman who didn't seem to be competing with the world to prove she still existed. She simply existed, whole, with a steadiness that wasn't the absence of pain, but the presence of a life that had been truly lived. One of those afternoons, Amy said, "I'm afraid that when I reach your age, I'll look back and see I didn't do anything with what I wanted to do." Nora was quiet for a moment. "When I was 29, she said finally, I had that same fear. I thought there was a right moment for things, and that if I missed it, I'd miss the thing." "Isn't that true?" "Some things do have a window," said Nora, "but fewer than we think. I started volunteering at 64. I learned to make proper bread at 68. Last week, I started learning French because I've always wanted to, and I kept finding reasons not to." Amy looked at her. "French at 72? "Why not?" said Nora, simply. Amy was quiet for a moment. Then she laughed, not with mockery, but the laugh of someone who has just been given something they needed. That answer stayed with her. Why not? Two small words, but sometimes a whole life begins to change when someone returns a possibility you had quietly discarded. George had died 2 years ago. Nora had moved through that grief with the honesty of someone who doesn't try to make the pain smaller than it is. She had cried when she needed to cry, been quiet when she needed quiet, accepted company when it helped, and asked for solitude when solitude was what healed. In the first months, everything in the house seemed to call for him. The chair he always sat in to read, the particular mug he always used, even though there were identical ones, his slippers by the door, which she took weeks to put away. There were days when his absence seemed to occupy more space than his presence ever had. And she had continued. Not because it was simple, but because she had discovered over the years that the soul doesn't stop wanting things just because life becomes hard, that curiosity has no expiry date, that the desire to learn, to do, to be present in the world in an active and intentional way, that desire is not the privilege of the young. It is the privilege of those who are alive. And she was alive. At 72, with her longing for George, with her French learned gradually from a small book, with her 2 mornings at the surgery each week, with her afternoon conversations with Amy, she was completely, undeniably alive. Sometimes she felt something like guilt for that, for laughing on a beautiful afternoon, for the small excitement of learning a new word, for leaving the surgery on certain mornings feeling that the day had been worthwhile. But then she remembered George saying, "Took a while, but it got there," and understood that continuing wasn't a betrayal of his absence. It was honoring the life they had built together. On an afternoon in October, Amy arrived with news. She had made a decision she had been putting off for months. She had enrolled in a course she had wanted to do, and for which she had found, systematically, every possible reason not to. "I did it," she said, with an expression that mixed fear and relief in a way Nora recognized immediately. How does it feel? Frightened and relieved at the same time. "That's how it feels when you finally stop waiting for the right moment," said Nora. Amy nodded. "You're partly responsible for this, you know." "Good," said Nora. They sat quietly for a moment, the two of them, with the tea cooling in the cups and the afternoon light coming through the window in that particular golden way October sometimes has. Nora thought about the girl who had wanted to study nursing in a small northern town, about the desire she had kept for decades without it disappearing, about George saying, "Took a while, but it got there." She thought about how resilient the soul is in a way the body sometimes isn't, how it keeps burning, keeps wanting, keeps curious and alive and present, even as the years pass and the mirror shows a different version of the person who exists inside. Amy looked at her then, as if seeing not only an older neighbor, but a future version of courage. Not loud courage, not the kind that makes speeches or proves anything to anyone. The quieter kind. The kind that says yes to a course, yes to a new word, yes to another morning, yes to beginning again, without needing the world to applaud it. Time had passed, a great deal of time, but the flame had not gone out. It never had. Nora is still learning French, slowly, without hurry, with the patience of someone who knows that learning isn't a race. She writes new words in a small notebook, repeats phrases quietly while she waters the plants. Sometimes she gets the pronunciation wrong and laughs to herself in the kitchen, imagining George making some comment. Other times she gets a whole sentence right and feels a simple, almost childlike joy, as though she has opened a new window inside her own mind. On her mornings at the surgery, she is still there, present, attentive, offering what she can with what she has. She doesn't wear a medical uniform, she doesn't have a diploma on the wall, but she has eyes trained by living, available hands, and a way of listening that many people only find in her. The afternoon conversations with Amy continue, richer now that both of them are discovering that growth has no fixed direction and no age limit. Sometimes they talk about choices, sometimes about fear, sometimes about George, about Amy's course, about a new French word, about the bread Nora has finally learned to make without getting the dough wrong. She is 72 years old and has a soul that never received the message that it should have cooled by now. And perhaps that quiet and consistent refusal to let the flame go out, is the most beautiful way of continuing to exist in the world. Not with noise, not with grand announcements, simply continuing, learning, wanting, proving day by day that spring is not a season, it is a state of soul. If you know someone who might need to hear this today, perhaps this is a gift worth sharing.